Let's get ready to rumble!
So before we start this roundup, I want to talk about Michael Dokes. He's apparently really sick with cancer in his stomach and liver. And prognosis is not looking too good. And we might lose him very soon. I've been familiar with Michael Dokes' work since he stopped Mike Weaver in one round, and then they drew over 15. In the first fight, where Dokes stopped Weaver controversially in one round, that was for Weaver's WBA belt at the time. Then I remember him losing the title to Jerry Coetzee, which was a major shock at the time. You know, apparently Dokes had been partying hard, cocaine and drinking and womanizing, and Coetzee came out punching hard and did what he had to do, you know. Then I remember the bouts against Evander Holyfield, and he contested that bout evenly for at least the first 8 or 9 rounds, and had Holyfield in some deep water. Holyfield won the bout in about 10 or 11. And the last major fight I remember Dokes in was against Razor Ruddock. And Ruddock just closed the show in 4 rounds. It was, let's say, one of the most brutal finishes you will ever see in the heavyweight division. Let's just say that. So obviously I'm going to be rooting for Dokes to overcome this if miracles are possible. At Dokes' peak, he stood at 6'3". He came in around between 15 and 15 and a half stone. He had fast hands. He had a decent punch. He also punched in combinations, which a lot of heavyweights do not do today. A skillful boxer, knew his way around the ring, and was a very tough competitor. I remember the destruction job he done on the British champion, John L. Gardner. I think he won that in about 4 rounds. And that was brutal. So, yeah, Michael Dokes. So we go to the editor's letter, Chris Dixon. In the wake of the last few weeks and the last few months, we started with former British super middleweight champion Tony Dodson, found guilty for taking a performance-enhancing substance. Then we had the high-profiling case of Larry Olubamiwo. And just last week, Enzo Maccarinelli, he got himself in the frame. For whatever reasons, Larry seems to have been made a somewhat scapegoat, in my opinion, considering Larry hasn't even lifted a Southern Area title. His case has been more pronounced than ex-champions like Dodson, British champion, and Maccarinelli. Wasn't he the WBO cruiserweight champion? He had some kind of belt because he fought a unification bout with David Haye. And that seems to have barely touched the radar in terms of news headlines. So Chris Dixon is looking ahead to the positives. Like we have Chisora and Haye, Kell Brook versus Carson Jones, Kerry Hope, the new European champion. He takes on Gregors Proska in a rematch. Derry Matthews takes on Gavin Rees. And the new guns, the new prospects on the British horizon are Ryan Aston, Scott Cardle, Khalid Yafai, and Ryan Taylor. They will all showcase their wares on the Matthews and Rees bill. The London Olympics, Andre Ward versus Chad Dawson, Kevin Mitchell versus Ricky Burns. Sergio Martinez versus Chavez Jr. After I finish this report, I'm going to go check something out. It's called Boxing News Television, BNTV. It's on www.boxingnewsonline.net, bntv.asp. So go check that out. On the guest column today, we have Bob Me. He wants some answers to some simple questions, like why the WBA and the IBF have not yet resolved what they're going to do with Lamont Peterson. The article is titled, "We Need Transparency." 2 hearings from the Nevada State Athletic Commission have been cancelled. This is unacceptable. It exposes the disorganized and fractured way that boxing governs its sport at elite level. Richard Schaefer from Golden Boy, who is the CEO, he wants Khan to be reinstated his belts. And if not, he wants the belts to be part of the prize when Khan challenges Danny Garcia for his WBC belt. In effect, that would be a unification match, WBO belt minus. But at the same time, the WBA and IBF have no right to rush Lamont Peterson's trial and conclude it just for the business and promotional interests of Golden Boy Promotions. At the same time, they are dragging their heels. And I suppose Schaefer does have a reasonable argument. Without transparency and full public statements from those at the top of the tree, how can we expect those at a lower level to fall in line and do what's right? On the panel, we have Tony Dodson, a former British super middleweight champion. We have John Murray, a former lightweight world challenger, losing to Brandon Rios. And we have Michael Jennings, best known for his losing fight against Miguel Cotto. And to top off the panel, we have Billy Nelson, who is a British boxing trainer. The first question: who will win out of Kell Brook and Carson Jones? Tony Dodson is going for Brook to win by stoppage. John Murray says, whenever I've seen Brook fight, he's looked impressive, and he's tipping Brook for the win. Michael Jennings is going for Kell Brook. He says Jones can punch a bit, but Brook's defense is very good. If he works off the jab and keeps disciplined, I can see him stopping Jones. Billy Nelson, he says, I think Brook will win, but Jones will make him work very hard for it. Boxing Beats and Rhymes says, as long as Brook doesn't tighten up because it's supposedly a big match, which it really isn't, because Jones has lost 8 times and he's been stopped 3 times, that does not make this some big match, I'm afraid. Yeah? And people go on and keep talking about Carson's been through the mill, he's been flawed, he's been put into fights, thrown in the deep end. Well, what are you trying to tell me? All these guys who beat Carson Jones are better than Kell Brook. Is that what you're saying? Yeah? Just because you're getting beaten up a lot doesn't mean you're learning shit. Yeah? In my opinion, Jones telegraphs a lot of his shots. As long as Brook doesn't get overawed, doesn't let fear dominate his mind state, and he stays fluid and boxes how he can box, he will win. People talk about Kell Brook hasn't been tested. Yeah, well, Roy Jones wasn't tested for a long time. You know why? Because he was bloody good. If you're bloody good, it may well be that your test doesn't come for a very long time. And I have a feeling that after this fight, we're still going to be asking the same questions of Kell Brook. Can he take a punch? What if he's pushed on the ropes? What will happen if somebody takes him in the trenches? What if he faces somebody with a great left jab? And etc., etc. Brook will win this fight by convincing stoppage. Yeah? And I'm going out on a limb and saying that.
I am ranked number one. One! That means I'm the best. But this bum is taking the easy matches. Fight another bum. I'm telling you and everybody here, I'll fight him anywhere, anytime.
The readers' poll, this week they really took it there. They really did. And now I know boxing news goes out to a worldwide audience. But I have to question, what would the result of this poll, what would it be if they took it in America? And to be honest, I don't like sitting on the fence. I like to commit, but I'm going to have to sit on the fence on this one. Here we go. If Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins both retired tomorrow, who would have had the strongest career? I think we need the drum roll on this one. Roy Jones, 36%. And Bernard Hopkins, a massive 64%. Wow. Paul Walker, he says Bernard Hopkins, without a shadow of a doubt. Roy Jones Jr. in his prime was the more gifted fighter. But in terms of legacy, there has to be a lot said for taking the challenge. Daniel Boyle, he says prime Roy Jones, he dominated a couple of divisions, whereas Hopkins dominated an overrated middleweight division only when Roy moved up. Jim Marshall, he says Bernard Hopkins, because of his longevity and the fact he was beating guys like Pascal and Pavlik when he was in his 40s. Kev Boulos, the stats say Hopkins over the career, but Jones was far more impressive at his peak. Boxing Beats and Rhymes says, sorry man, I'm bitching out on this one. Let's go to the 10 count. Which fighters in this generation will be inducted into the Hall of Fame? Number 1, Floyd Mayweather. Regardless of what happens to here on to the end of his career, he is canastota bound, the most naturally gifted fighter of his generation. Boxing history will be very kind, and it will welcome him at the top of the table if he beats Manny Pacquiao and Sergio Martinez along the way. Number 2, Manny Pacquiao. If Timothy Bradley knocks Pacquiao out in the opening round of their potential rematch, the Filipino is still on course to be inducted into the Hall of Fame at the first time of asking. Number 3, Andre Ward. As things stand, winning the Super 6 and beating his nearest rivals is not enough to get Ward a membership. However, at only 28 years of age and approaching his peak, SOG has plenty of time to polish his application. Beating Chad Dawson will not harm his case, and if he can beat the winner of Martinez and Chavez, he'll be on his way. Number 4, Nonito Donaire. Since he starched Fernando Montiel last year, his march has certainly slowed. But with the likes of Abner Maris, Guillermo Rigondeaux, and Yokeris Gamboa, the opportunities for success and failure are rife. Juan Manuel Marquez, start spreading the news, start carving out his name. He's going to be a part of it. New York, New York. Sergio Martinez comes in at number 6. If he retires tomorrow, does he deserve a spot? Hell no! That was me chiming in. Considering the likes of Nassim Hamed, Sot Chitalada, Lupe Pintor have failed to gain access. However, middleweight champions are always valued highly. And if he can beat Chavez and Saul Alvarez, his chances will then increase. Number 7, Vladimir Klitschko. Any heavyweight champion who is 18-2 in world title fights has to make it, regardless of the competition. Number 8, Chad Dawson. Convincing wins over Bernard Hopkins, Glenn Johnson, Antonio Tarver, and Thomas Adamek demonstrate that Dawson is one of the best. But one of the best of all time? No. At number 9, Roman Gonzalez. Barely known outside the hardcore fan, Gonzalez would currently have a job convincing selectors he merited a plaque. But at 25 years of age and a world leader for the last 4 years, the destructive Nicaraguan has a great chance of getting the call. Number 10, Miguel Cotto. 2 of his 3 losses came to Mayweather and Pacquiao. The validity of the other 2, Margarito, will always be shrouded in eternal doubt. Take a look at the rest of his record. His 17 title wins across 3 divisions. Cotto's invitation is already in the post. And look, I'm not going to deny what they said about Vladimir Klitschko, yeah? If he's in there, nobody can argue with that. But if you're going to say, because he has an 18-2 record, that automatically gets him a place, regardless of the competition. These are Boxing News' words. What about Sven Otke? He retired undefeated. I don't know how much fights he had, but he made at least 14 or 15 defenses of that IBF super middleweight title. Should he be in the Hall of Fame? Just putting it out there. Due to commitments outside of boxing, I'm going to have to wrap this one up early. So we're going to finish with the hit and miss section. So on the hit section, we have Scott Harrison at number 1. He came back with a win earlier this week after doing some lengthy bids in prison. At number 2, we have Box Nation with their Beyond the Rope series, which tells the progress of the training camps of Derek Chisora and David Hay. They've attracted a whole load of viewers. Number 3, Steve Harkin. After losing 4 fights, he finally got on the winning track. At number 4, we have Cornelius Bundridge. The Detroit man hasn't been very impressive, but he retained his light middleweight title against Corey Spinks. Now we go to the miss section. At number 4, Lamont Peterson. Khan's Conqueror shredded his reputation by failing drugs tests. Now the WBA are finally getting around to stripping him of his belt. Number 3, Paul Appleby, who was beaten and stopped by John Simpson. Number 2, Roy Jones, whose glory days have gone and was floored by a mediocre opponent last week. And number 1 is drugs in boxing. 2 more British fighters have tested positive recently. Boxing News says that could be looked on as a positive, as the issue is now being highlighted and education is being offered. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I've ran through the whole of this magazine. And Enzo Macronelli used to fight on ITV pretty frequently, on ITV2. That's terrestrial television. He held the WBO belt, if I'm correct. He was quite a high-profile fighter. So why is it he hasn't been mentioned once in the magazine for taking a PED? But yet, Larry Olabawima, who never even sniffed or got near Southern area level, he wasn't on the radar of top-level fighters in the UK. But yet, had a whole article for himself in the Boxing News. He had a big spread on Sky Sports' website. And it does seem that Larry is being scapegoated. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he's got the archetype, stereotype of what a drug taker would have. And he's got that really muscular physique. I don't know what it is. But Tony Dodson and Enzo Macronelli, former British champions and shit with belts, yeah? Fairly high-profile British fighters. Their cases have barely been spoken about. Robert Guerrero, who has one of the cleanest boxing styles out there. I like watching this guy fight. He's a throwback fighter in terms of skill. He takes on Selcock Aiden for the interim. Please stop using these terms. For the interim WBC welterweight belt. Michael Buffer is going to announce the Hey Chisora fight on July the 14th at Upton Park. Jamil McCline, former heavyweight contender, is set to retire at the age of 42. I kind of respect Marcus Maidana and his camp. They have confirmed their rejection of the proposed 21st of July fight against Keith Thurman. They've confirmed that they're rejecting this fight. At least they come up and said, look, this guy's a little tougher than what we want now. They didn't come and make some bullshit excuses. I sort of respect that. I have to admit. And although that doesn't put a W on Thurman's resume, it does signal that he's a danger man. You know? He can take that as a mark of respect that one of the hardest punchers and toughest fighters in the division said, look, you're a little bit too tough for me to take on as a warm-up bout. Barry Lee, a former Scottish area middleweight champion in 2004, has been found dead at the age of 30 in Ghana. He was working for an oil and gas company. Apparently he just collapsed and died. Chris Eubanks Jr. takes on Terry Carruthers on the Fury Vinny Maddalone bill. Don George takes on Adonis Stevenson on the Tavares Cloud Jean Pascal bill. Now, I've seen Adonis on KOTV a few times, and although they only show highlights on there, he looks like a good puncher. But in saying that, Fair Shake Boxing, whose opinion I respect highly, doesn't have great words to say about Adonis. You know what I mean? A tribute ceremony was held for Joe Frazier by USA Boxing last Friday at the Colorado Springs Training Center. Frazier, who passed away in November last year, won an Olympic gold in 1964. Matthew Hatton is calling out Junior Witter for a shot at his British welterweight title. And just reading further into this article, Matthew Hatton has apparently cut ties with Ricky Hatton's Hatton Promotions and looks to be doing his own thing. Okay. Juan Manuel Marquez is now the full WB light welterweight champion as opposed to being the interim WBO champion. Now Timothy Bradley has gave up that belt. More confusion with the belts. At the Galway Town Hall, which is in Ireland, I think, in the Republic of Ireland, if I'm not mistaken, there will be a documentary premiered about James J. Corbett, the former world heavyweight champion. It will be narrated by Liam Neeson and will likely be shown in Ireland by Setanta Sports. Zubek Basan-Gorev takes on Lucas Konenchi, who will be challenging for his WBO interim light middleweight belt. I'm really getting sick of this fucking shit. I'm really getting sick of it. Nearly every fight I'm reading out is interim. You know what I mean? It's really... Anyway, work has begun in Galveston, Texas, on a Jack Johnson Park that will honor the legendary former world heavyweight champion. A life-size statue of the first black heavyweight champion has been erected, and the park is scheduled to open in October. After weeks of negotiations, it's been confirmed that Vitaly Klitschko will defend his WBC heavyweight champion against Manuel Charr. Who is it? Who is it? Kind of reminds me of that Mantronic song. Yeah, the Klitschkos will be in the Hall of Fame. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, what they have to realize is when these history books will be written outside of Germany, They're going to be writing, yes, very competent fighters. They held the title for various years and they wiped out divisions. And then they're going to say, for the most part, they face mediocre competition and they couldn't attract the networks in America or in any other country that has professional boxing as one of its premier sports. That's a real shame for them. Maybe they should start fighting more in America, make some title defenses in Britain. I know Vladimir fought Monty Barrett in Millwall years ago, and I'm sure Vitaly came to London and beat up Herbie Hyde. So there's not much they can do about the division. It's not their fault. They probably just need to globetrot more to get their profile noticed on a world level. And despite what they're saying, they really have no choice but call out the winner of Hay and Chisora. It's fucked up because, yeah, both brothers have beaten both of them fighters. It's fucked up. But all you gotta do is picture this scenario. The winner of Hay and Chisora versus Vladimir or Vitaly in London. Look, that's a big fight. That's a big fight. Your profile's low. If it wasn't broke, I'd advise not to fix it. As far as being recognizable, it is broke a little. Because Tony Thompson, Manuel Cha, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Kell Brook is Boxing News' pick to defeat Carson Jones after a tough points decision. I've already committed and I'm saying that Brook will stop him convincingly, you know. See, if I'm going to do predictions, I'm just going all the way. I'm just going ham. I'm just going to do what I believe. No apologies. No trying to say, yeah, but it could go that way as well. No. Kell's going to knock him the fuck out.
I'll be back.
Kerry Hope is the tip to beat Gregors Proska for the same European middleweight title that Hope took off Proska already just a few months back. Gavin Reese is the tip to defeat Derry Matthews. You might need to check that fight out because I think it's going to be a very good fight. Derry Matthews in his last fight, he knocked out highly touted, undefeated prospect Anthony Crolla. And Gavin Reese is deceptive. He's a very small guy. And he looks like, boy, I'm just going to brush him off easy. But yo, dude can box. I mean, so check that one out. Gavin Reese is also a former WBA light welterweight champion. Nonito Donaire is the pick against Jeffrey Mafabula. Both men will be putting their world titles on the line at super bantamweight. Mafabula is the IBF champion and Donaire is the WBO champion. Boxing News suggests that Donaire will win the fight in 8 rounds. Kelly Pavlik is on this bill as well. He takes on Will Rosinski. Now, I've been trying for all the might of me to track down this Will Rosinski-Edwin Rodriguez fight without no success. But according to Fair Shake Boxing, as I said, I respect his opinion. He says Rosinski actually won that fight and got robbed. And in my opinion, Rodriguez is a very good fighter. So if Rosinski got robbed against someone of Rodriguez's caliber, then theoretically and potentially, he could give Pavlik a harder fight than the Boxing News are suggesting. The Boxing News are suggesting that Rosinski will be lucky to see the final belt. But we shall see. I don't know if it's an optical illusion, but Mr. Fury, the British heavyweight champion, is looking a lot leaner than usual. He fights Vinny Maddalone later on tonight. Boxing News are tipping Fury to win in 5 rounds. However, there is a more competitive fight on the bill, and that will be pitting Lee Haskins against Stuart Hall for the vacant European bantamweight title, which was relinquished by Jamie McDonald. Ashley Sexton was tipped to beat Paul Butler in a super flyweight eliminator for the British title. That fight took place yesterday, and Boxing News, they got it totally wrong, and Paul Butler won. There was a bill in Poland last week which showcased 3 African-American fighters who many may consider have seen better days. Roy Jones Jr., he outscored late substitute Paweł Glazewski. Jamil McCline, he lost on points to Artur Spilka. Nate Campbell, he outpointed Krzysztof Zott. Here are a few things that were said at the latest Boxing Hall of Fame. Thomas Hearn said, "I always gave my best, and I always hoped that the fans would accept me." He turned around and said, "This could not happen if we didn't fight each other. We made a lot of people happy and a lot of people sad." Mark Johnson said, "I'm proud to be the first African American in history to have won the World Flyweight and Super Flyweight Championships." Freddie Roach, he says, "This is the best day of my life. My mentor and idol was Eddie Futch." Michael Buffer, he said his most exciting moment was when George Foreman knocked out Michael Mora and became heavyweight champion again. Buffer closed with his trademark, "Let's get ready to rumble." Michael Katz, he said after the Pacquiao-Bradley fight, he wasn't sure if he wanted to be in the sport anymore. He saw Marvin Hagler the next morning. He asked Hagler, "Have you ever seen a worse decision than that?" Sugar Ray Leonard then arose from his seat and took a bow as the crowd roared. I think the word you're looking for there is irony. Al Bernstein, "I grew up wanting to be like Don Dunphy. He was the greatest boxing announcer of all time. He became a mentor and a friend. Now, Marvin Hagler is my favorite boxer of all time, barring none. He just is. But I hear Marvin can be a bit edgy, especially with fans and hangers-on. And I don't blame him, because I'm edgy. So, can't really tear the man head off for that. But I do say there is no smoke without fire. And a few people have complained about Hagler at certain events where he's very aloof and unapproachable. And a lot of people have said, well, if you're going to be that aloof and that distant from the fans, why even show up? But what people have to understand is that coldness that he displays is part of why he was such a great champion, and you just have to deal with that somehow. But I want to tie this letter in from Terry Clark from Ruislip. He also attended the Boxing Hall of Fame at Canastota. And his letter is entitled "Unhappy at the Hall." Having read John Scully's article on his visit to Canastota for this year's Boxing Hall of Fame, I felt I must put forward my experience. I also went this year, and it will probably be my last time too. The boxers I wanted to get photos and autographs from, like Hearns, Hagler, Leonard, had such tight security that I was made to feel as though I was just a pain in the rear end, just to ask. On the occasion that I did manage to battle my way through the large crowds, I managed to get to Tommy Hearns. When I offered up my boxing glove for Tommy to sign, he said, "Sorry man, I can't sign gloves." Before going to Canastota, I was advised that I need not pre-book for any of the events, as tickets would be available there. Only to find out, everything was sold out from day one. Some of the people there could not have been more accommodating. Ray Mercer never passed anybody who spoke to him. Likewise, Al Bernstein and Mickey Ward. But for an event that was advertised for the fans and a chance for them to meet their heroes, it fell short of the mark. Blood clot, Tommy Hearns, man. You couldn't sign a man's glove. Come on up, we have to see you. I don't know why he couldn't sign the glove. Is it a legal reason? Are his hands fucked up? I don't know. I don't get that. But I just wanted to put his letter forward because we hear great things about them events, sometimes it's nice to get the fans' perspective of how shit is really going down. In the flashback section, we go back to the week in 1939. Jackie Wilson from Pittsburgh. He won the World Featherweight title, the NBA version. He held the title from 1941 to 1943. But in the summer of 39, he campaigned in Australia. On May the 31st, he easily outpointed national bantam and featherweight champion Mickey Miller over 12 rounds at the Melbourne Stadium. We reported Wilson was never troubled and was slightly inclined to be even lenient with his adversary. In fact, there were times when the fight resembled a sparring match. In this issue, they had Joe Louis on the cover. And then we go to the Boxing News Super Middleweight Rankings. Andre Ward at number 1, Carl Froch at number 2, Mikkel Kessler at number 3, Lucien Boutet at number 4, Robert Stieglitz at number 5, Andre Durrell at number 6, Glenn Johnson at number 7, Caroline Bolke at number 8, number 9 is Sakio Beaker, and at number 10 we have Brian McGee. So that's the review for 7/7/2012, and I'm going to say peace out.
Hey!